Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. Much to discuss as ever. Now, you will see I'm experimenting here on Facebook and X. The live stream should be appearing in landscape style. So if you watch it, it'd be better if you're watching on a phone. Now, I don't know if that suits people better or not. Tell me in the comments, but I thought I would give it a try in any case. So lots to talk about as ever. I haven't got any guests today, so I'll be able to look at your comments. So what the comments there. Ready? Where do we start? Let's start off at our conference on Saturday. It's our biggest annual event, our annual conference in November. It was really good, very good, great atmosphere, lots of enthusiasm, a good number of new people there as well, and a range of excellent speakers on all sorts of topics. So we'll publish a lot of the content, if not all the content, over the next week or two. So if you couldn't make it along, or even if you could, you might want to rewatch some of the talks. They're very interesting indeed. For example, we had Dr. Paul Gilfillan talking about the sociological evidence that supports the family party policy about family structure. Christian Hacking spoke about pro-life issue from a democratic point of view. Who else? We had Dr. Gordon MacDonald from Care Not Killing, gave us some detail about the bill in the Scottish Parliament, which I'll come on to some of that later. So it was really good. Another thing we did as well, we took some votes on some new policies. We've been going through a policy review process. Those of you who are members of the family party or regular donors, you will have been involved in this. So we've been updating our policies, adding policies in some new areas, inviting people to comment. And part of that process was to take a vote on a few policies at the conference. Now, I'll run down a couple of them and then maybe do a few later on. Right, here's the first one. People identifying as trans or non-binary should not be permitted to be teachers or to work with children in schools in any capacity. Right, so in other words, that they can't be a good role model for children. And what inspired that policy was a couple of chats actually with people who said, right, our kids in primary school, and they've got a non-binary teacher who they can't call her, they have to call her something else or this sort of thing. And the school, explains to pupils what pronouns they have to use, etc., for this teacher because they're what's called non-binary. And the parents were saying, we just don't want this for our child. We don't want to have to be explaining this. We don't want to have this person influencing the values of our child. So basically it comes down to whose side are you on? Because you have to be on one side or the other. If you allow someone like that to be a teacher, then the class is going to have to go along with and use the right pronouns, and they'll see this person dressing in a whatever ambiguous manner, maybe changing from one day to the next. So it's just a question of which side are you on? Are you on the side that says, well, that's just bad luck parents and bad luck children, you're just going to have to get used to it because that's the modern world, and some people are non-binary and transgender, whatever, so some of them are going to be your teachers, so tough. That's the side of all the other parties. We're on the concerned parents side, saying no, that this shouldn't happen. Children shouldn't have to face this. Even in high school, you can't be a positive role model to young people if you're modeling, well, it's something, a sort of mental illness or psychological problem, some sort of developmental problem. So I think that is perfectly reasonable policy. That passed overwhelmingly at the conference. Next one, about opposing digital ID. That's probably quite straightforward. I think most parties, apart from the Labour Party, are opposing digital ID. But my personal view on these things, I've never been someone who's got particularly animated about these like privacy issues and the government's got your data. There's just never been things that have particularly wound me up. But I have been persuaded, though, that the ability that this gives the government and other businesses as well to misuse this data in order to try and exert control over people makes me think we would be better off without them. So that policy passed by a huge margin as well. Right, I'll come back to some of the others later. Let's get some things on the screen. Good evening, Mary. Right, let's start here. Actually, now Stuart Wayton has been on this live stream from time to time. Stuart's someone I know quite well. He's not a member of the family party. We have some differences on a few issues like pro-life, sexuality, etc. But we agree on a lot of things as well. Now, Stuart is a lecturer, I think sociology and criminology, I think that's part of his title, at Abertay University up in Dundee. And he's had issues with his employer before, as people like Stuart, as people like me tend to have. Okay, Paul Gilfillan as well, they spoke at the conference. But Stuart, what's going to happen with Stuart now seems more severe than ever. I'm not sure it's particularly from the university authorities at the moment. It's from the student body. And what happened is a student invited in the group Justice, what are they called? Justice for Innocent Men Scotland. Okay, and this is a group of men who say they were falsely convicted for sexual crimes. And their grounds for that is that they weren't allowed to bring forward all of the relevant evidence in their case because of the SNP's rules that is designed to really restrict the evidence that can be brought forward for the defense in a sexual assault case. Now, I've spoken to lawyers involved in this area. There have been lawyers who speak in the public domain on this as well, and they're seriously concerned. They're saying these trials are fundamentally not fair because key evidence can't be brought forward. Key evidence like, a text earlier in the day saying, hey, come up to my hotel room and let's have sex, for example. Or the fact that after the alleged rape, then they had a meal together and then had sex again the next night, for example. Now, that's not conclusive evidence, but it is relevant evidence. And that's an example of the type of evidence that's been excluded from cases. So a lot of men are feeling that they've been unjustly treated. And the lawyers involved in the cases are agreeing. So I think there's a fair point. I'm sure some of the people who are pleading innocence are probably guilty, but there is a genuine, reasonable issue to be looked at here. So Stuart invited some representatives of this group to come and speak in one of his courses in a seminar. I'd imagine there's all sorts of people coming to speak to the students because that's the topic of his course. It's absolutely relevant to the course that he's teaching. This is a live issue, live controversy in the Scottish legal system. And so an academic who covers criminology will bring this topic to the fore and will bring in people to give one side of the story to students. I'm sure there'll be people to give the other side, etc. But I think mainly students have really turned on him. I've been complaining. I've sort of cut the bottom off the graffiti there because it's sort of a bit obscene. But anyway, Waiton, sexist are the middle two words in any case. So it seems like he is really getting it from all sides. And there have been media reports on this. I read a media report in the Daily Mail. I think it was pretty sure it was Daily Mail, that was sort of entirely unsympathetic to Stuart Waiton. I mean, really, in Scotland, on this sort of thing, you've got no friends in the media, none whatsoever. The same during my GTCS case. Which publications were on my side? None, zero. They're on Reform's side. They're okay with that. But if you're actually like a sort of social conservative, then they're not so keen. Yeah, so Stuart's in very hot water. I mean, having graffiti like that on the university building, apparently around Dundee as well. I mean, this is appalling. I hope some of these people get caught just for the graffiti even and get charged for it. So yeah, Stuart is in hot water there. So I'm certainly very supportive of him over this issue, and we'll maybe hear the full story in the course of time. But yeah, very concerning, I would say. Right, what else have we got going on? BBC's big news at the moment. Trump threatening to sue them, etc. Lots of discussion going on. They've been talking about their like sort of anti-Israel bias, which we all knew already. Just their general. It's not so much left wing; it's progressive liberal bias. And the focus at the moment tends to be on their news reporting. But I think it's the other programs that are even worse. The news reporting, at least they think people are going to be checking to see if it's biased. Okay, it doesn't stop them, but they may be a bit more careful. When it comes to the drama and the children's programs and the history programs and everything else, I think that's where the BBC is even worse, where their bias is even more apparent. So family party policy is that they should be a subscription service. So if you don't want the BBC, like me, you just don't pay and you don't watch it. Instead of being like me, who has to pay because I want to watch something else. So I pay the BBC for nothing in order to be able to pay another TV company to watch something I do want to watch, which is totally wrong. Yeah, they had their pregnant people incident recently. as well, didn't they? Yeah, but typical. Excellent point, John. Mary, my wife, pointed this out as well. So the BBC doctored Trump's speech and put two bits together. They did the same to Pauline Gallagher in the very earliest days of the family party, when sex education in schools was a big issue, and there was the Muslim group in Birmingham objecting to basically LGBT education in schools, and it became a big national news story. Controversy. So the BBC came to Scotland to make a documentary about it. They spoke to me, but didn't use anything from my interview. And they spoke to Pauline Gallagher, and they did publish in Panorama as well. They did publish material from that interview. And they did the same thing. They put together a question that had been asked to Pauline, and then they spliced in an answer that was not her answer to that question. So when I was watching it, when it was live, when it was first shown, I heard Pauline answer, and I thought, oh dear, Pauline, right, that's not, that didn't really hit the mark. That wasn't great. But then it turns out that that wasn't her answer to that question. Pauline decided not to complain to the BBC, but I'd say Panorama again, absolutely appalling. I wouldn't dream of doing that in a YouTube video. I would not dream of editing something together to make it misleading. Absolutely not. But the BBC, well, happens more than once, obviously. I mean, I get the point. It would be really great if the BBC could work properly and fulfill its function. Even they talk about their fact checking. I mean, it's so embarrassing for them that they have to be trying to present themselves as this trustworthy guardians of the truth. We're the fact checkers. I mean, I wish they could be, because we do need fact checkers, because all sorts of rubbish floats around on the internet. So that could be a really valuable service if we could trust the BBC to do it in a neutral manner, which we absolutely can't. So the story will go on. Let's see where it ends. I think it needs drastic action. It doesn't need a couple of people to resign, and it needs more drastic action than that. And I think with the Labour government, it's not going to happen. I think it's pitiful the way the Lib Dems have come out defending the BBC and trying to turn it into if you like Trump, you're on Trump's side. If you like the BBC, or if you don't like Trump, you'll be on the BBC's side. We don't like Trump, so we're on the BBC's side. So we're the people standing up to Trump. I mean, it's absolute opportunistic nonsense for the Lib Dems to try and capitalize on it. So I hope that falls flat on its face. But right, let us continue. This was an interesting, just something I saw on X. South Korea, its birth rate. Someone told me I shouldn't say fertility rate, because fertility is to do with the ability to have babies, whereas birth rate is to do with how many babies are born. Okay, so it's birth rate, I should say. But I think people use fertility to mean the same thing. Anyway, so South Korea's birth rate is one of the lowest in the world, absolutely catastrophically low. I think it's under 1, the last I heard. So, I mean, basically their population is going to absolutely collapse. They'll have empty cities. How the businesses are going to operate, I really do not know. So major, major problems. This Lois McClatchy-Miller here. She's pointing out that she thinks that an element in that might be their obsession with childhood and immaturity. And I can see that. It's quite hard to articulate this and pin down exactly what I mean. I don't think she particularly pinned down what she meant at all. She said the aesthetic of youth and cuteness has convinced millennials that they are forever adolescents. So aesthetic of youth and cuteness, you can see the pictures there. And I've seen this when I was teaching. We had a lot of boys from the Far East, and some of them they'd be really into these sort of kiddie, cutie sort of personas, cartoon personas. And is that healthy for someone growing up? If that's so pervasive that becomes seen as normal, particularly for boys, rather than something that, it's not really for them. They've got other things. They don't want to be looking like that. They don't want this sort of either feminized or infantilized appearance. But it really seems to have a grip on South Korea. Is that a factor in their low birth rate? The fact that teenagers sort of not growing up, they just want to be kids grown into adulthood. I don't know, but I think it sounds like a viable hypothesis to me. It's interesting. I know China was trying to do the opposite. China was concerned that its young men were becoming sort of a bit feminized, so they wanted to toughen them up. So they want to do more sports and outdoor activities and this, that, and the other. I mean, fair enough. I think, okay, no, that's an issue. Fair enough. But it seems like in South Korea, the opposite's happening, and it's not working out particularly well. Right, a couple of stories I've spoken about this week on short videos. The first one was just another reminder of what happened with the Gender Recognition Act 2004. The reason we've got that, the reason the UK law says a man can become a woman can become a man, the reason it says that is because the European Court of Human Rights made the UK have passed that law. That's why there was no debate about it in Britain, really. Virtually no debate. There wasn't any manifestos. Just the European Court of Human Rights said to the UK, you have to do this. Someone sued you, and we've decided they're right. You have to introduce a law that allows legal gender change. So the UK did it. So to undo that law, we'd have to leave the European Court of Human Rights. So that's another good reason to leave the European Court of Human Rights. So the Family Party says, yeah, we need to leave. Even for that reason alone, we need to leave. Now, you can see at the moment, even with the Supreme Court judgment, that doesn't really mean very much. And everyone seems to think it means a lot about the definition of a man and a woman. Even with regard to that, there's now a transgender former judge taking the UK to the European Court of Human Rights to challenge that. Will they succeed or not? Well, frankly, I don't care. It just shouldn't be going there. There shouldn't be an appeal above the UK Supreme Court, which is politicized and ideological as it is. Now, another one I mentioned this week, will the ECHR support polygamy? This is the Yemeni gentleman, polygamist. He got 3 wives. He applied for asylum in the Netherlands and he was granted it. Then he applied for family unification, bringing wife number 1 and 8 children. And the Netherlands said, sure thing, bring him in. He then applied to bring his other 5 children from wives number 2 and 3. And obviously his plan was to get them in, and then they would apply to bring in wives number 2 and 3. But the Netherlands said, no, we don't recognize polygamy. You can't say family unification and bring in 3 wives and 13 kids. We're not having that. So, of course, this asylum seeker, this refugee who was granted refuge in the Netherlands in his hour of need, out of the gratitude he feels for that, he's taken the Netherlands to court. Who knows who's paying for it? Probably the Netherlands taxpayers. But taking them to court. And if the European Court says, yeah, we think polygamous marriages, that should count for family reunification, then that will apply in the UK as well. Will apply everywhere in the jurisdiction of the European Court of Human Rights. Totally, totally wrong. Right, this is another policy we passed at the conference. So, problem gambling is widespread, blighting thousands of gamblers and their families. Targeted measures to restrict and regulate the advertising and provision of gambling services will be considered where particular risks are identified. We didn't previously have any policy on gambling. And I think I mentioned on the live stream a while ago, I've been surprised what a hard line some of the Christian campaigning groups take on gambling, just saying it's wrong, full stop, end of story. I don't particularly share that view, but it is a problem in society, and there are particular forms, for example, like in-game gambling that encourage impulsive, out of control gambling. So Family Party policy, we would look at that actively, and if there are extra regulations that could help avoid problem gambling, we would look at those. Right, if anyone wants to comment about the appearance of this on Facebook and X, I'd be interested to hear. I would guess, yeah, probably if you're on a laptop or a tablet, or a PC, then that's probably not so good. If you're on a phone or a tablet, it's probably okay. Let me know. Right. This is another little video I made this week. I'll just add something to this. So this is Thomas Chalmers, basically founder of the Free Church of Scotland, without going into the whole story. And they try and smear him and the Free Church of Scotland as being associated with slavery, which is completely unjustified, just because they took donations from churches that had slave owners in them. So it's a pretty tenuous connection. But another thing I'd say with this about the plaque on it, And it said, the plaque said, the Free Church of Scotland, a conservative Christian group, is still active to this day. Still active to this day. What does that sound like? That makes it sound to me as if, wow, that's really surprising, isn't it? They've managed to keep going until today. They managed to soldier on and just about keep the thing going right up to today. I mean, how remarkable is that? I thought that was the sort of slant that the sign was saying, which is totally wrong. I mean, the Free Church of Scotland, as far as I'm aware, is it's doing pretty well. It's very active, and they're starting new churches left, right, and centre. I think a lot of their churches are thriving. So I just thought the sign as well, it wasn't just trying to make out that there's sort of some link to slavery. It was trying to say, wow, it's amazing. A group with this, like this, they're still managing to exist right up to today. Really frustrating. I mean, should I write a letter to them complaining? I guess maybe I'd say that's not my job. I sent this video to a few people in the Free Church of Scotland and Free Church Continuing and Associated Presbyterian Church and Free Presbyterian Church, etc. So send it a few. I'll say if they want to complain, I guess that's their job to complain. But I raised it because it's the SNP's values just interfere with everything. Museums, galleries. If Labour were in power, it would be exactly the same as well. You get the same in England as well. Sometimes, this is the sort of thing the Conservatives didn't get a grip on. They just let it carry on regardless. Will Reform get a grip on it? Possibly. It's probably something they would be interested in. With the Family Party, we certainly would. Right, Santa. I don't know if Neil's watching. So Christmas is coming. And I made a quick video about this today. I was reading the news report. And as I was reading it, I was thinking, it's not April the 1st, is it? Now, is there any indication that this is a joke? Is this really serious? Are STV really reporting this as a news story? And the answer is yes, they were. Primary school class told Santa is not real by teacher during lesson. I'm pretty sure there was a story like this a few years ago as well. So this lesson was discussing saints. I would guess it was an RS lesson. And they're talking about different saints and talking about St. Nicholas, Santa Claus. And somehow in the discussion, the teacher said that no, Santa's not real. Now, I would guess, I don't know, maybe it was a Catholic school. They were talking about the saints. But then there's this outcry. Oh, the other thing is the class was 10 and 11-year-olds. So we're not talking like 5 or 6-year-olds. We're talking 10 and 11-year-olds. I mean, do any of those really believe in Santa in any case at that age? I would suspect most of them don't. Anyway, but the teacher said that. Probably some kids went home and complained. Big fuss. The schools announced it, launched an investigation. The schools launched an investigation because a teacher told pupils the truth about something. Now, the point I made in my video was simply that, if only teachers would tell children that other things weren't true, like what they hear about posters like that. I mean, that's a poster that the Scottish government recommends to be put up in schools. So I really hope there's lots of teachers are telling their pupils, this is just not true. This is not true. Hopefully there are. And hopefully they don't get into trouble like you do for saying this Santa is not real. Just on the Santa topic, while I'm here, what's my view on that? My personal view is, with my boys, we didn't do Santa. We never pretended that Santa was real. We have cuddly toy Santa around the house or whatever, but we never told them that Santa was real. My reasoning with that was that I don't want to be telling them that something's true that they then realize isn't. I don't want to have the experience of realizing that, we've been misleading them. We've been stringing them along, because I guess that sets a precedent for children to then think, oh, well, that was that. What else might you be leading me on? What else might you be misleading me about? So that was our take. But lots of people think differently, and that's fine. But that's the way I saw it. It was quite amusing, actually, particularly when they were young, when people try and do the Santa talk with them, and the boys they try and explain to these adults, no, Santa's not real. It could be quite amusing. Hope he doesn't get stuck up the chimney again. Okay, that's okay. There are a few true believers of all ages here. St. Nicholas was real. Yes. Yeah. I don't know exactly what the teacher said. Right. Free Church of Scotland don't allow their members to talk to Catholics. Now, that's not true. That is definitely not true. Sue for defamation. To sue for defamation, you need to have suffered a loss. And they would never be able to prove that they'd suffered a loss on that basis. So there wouldn't be any damages to be awarded. It's also, I mean, what the plaque says isn't untrue. The issue is that they decide to focus on one thing that's potentially damaging to their reputation and ignore a lot of other things that they might have covered. So, right, here we go. Right, this is another thing I've been watching rolling on in the media. This is the For Women Scotland, etc., the gender critical feminists. I mean, they're still going. I'm not sure what they're demanding now. Maybe they're just gloating that they think they've won because of the Supreme Court judgment, but they haven't. So I'm not quite sure what they're demanding at these protests. But they had one at the Parliament recently. I didn't know about it, or I would have gone, not to join them. They wouldn't have wanted me to join them. But I thought it might be good to go along with our repeal the 2004 Gender Recognition Act, or go along with a pro-life placard. That might have been quite interesting as well, to see what sort of reaction we got. Anyway, so they had their protest, and Tom Harlow, the irritating gentleman who does a sort of strip show thing, and he calls himself Cabaret Against Hate Speech. He's turned up at our events, comes with a massive speaker and just blasts music and spouts nonsense just to drown out any attempt to speak at the demonstration. Now, I think that's totally out of order. I think the police should tell him, you can't do that. You cannot just go along and destroy someone's event. And then there was some kerfuffle about an umbrella. But it's just fascinating to see how the media are covering this stuff. And it's really trivial. It's the sort of thing that's happened at family party things time and time again. But the For Women Scotland, etc., somehow they're regarded as newsworthy. And they say the media keep printing stories about really sort of trivial nonsense that goes on at their events. The next time they have events, I say I would like to go along with our placards, repeal the 2004 Gender Recognition Act, which I would imagine quite a lot of them might agree with. But I don't know why it's not a central point that they make, but to take a pro-life placard as well. And I would imagine that might be quite informative to hear the points. A training minister I worked with was constantly reported for having me in his team and talking with me. Right, I know a lot of people in the Free Church of Scotland, and yeah, I would say there certainly is no problem with them speaking to Catholics or whatever. But the big issue with the Presbyterian churches in Scotland was back, I don't know, 25 years ago, and that was in the Free Presbyterian Church, where, if I'm getting this right, 2 people went to requiem masses for friends, went to Catholic funerals, in other words, for friends. And the Free Presbyterian Church of Scotland took issue with that very strongly. And I think both of the people basically might have been kicked out of the church. And that resulted in a split and the creation of the Associated Presbyterian Church. So I think that did happen. I don't know what their policy is now. I don't know, but I guess that's not a family party business. But that's what happened there. Right. Right. I think we should tax megaphones. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. It's an interesting one, because if you've got someone holding an outdoor event, let's take Alex Samadov from it. If you're holding an outdoor event, you're trying to have speeches, let's say outside the Parliament. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So you can advertise your event. You could have, 500 people come along to it, and you've got a lineup of speakers, and they're going to address the masses. Now, if people want to come along and counter protest, fine, we do that sometimes. But what we'll do, we'll go along with our placards and stand in a place, close as we reasonably can, where we can get placards nice and high and people can see them. So basically, it's probably a media thing. So any media there can get a shot to show both sides of the argument. And then it'll also say Scottish Family Party on the placards. So we do that. Yeah, we'll go along as counter-protest, but we definitely will not go along with the intention of destroying the other person's event. That's just wrong, and the police shouldn't allow it. But they do. They do. And the easiest way to destroy a person's event is to make noise, because you can set up anywhere nearby, get your speaker blasting away, and you can just destroy their event. And it's not right. It's wrong to do that. And also, it's pretty inflammatory. And if you've got the wrong people there, it's likely to end up in a punch-up. If you've arranged a big event and you've got your speakers lined up and someone is there, maybe even just one person, trying to destroy it with their technical equipment, and the police won't do anything, it's pretty tempting to go out and start pulling a few plugs out yourself, isn't it? So allowing that creates quite an inflammatory situation. So it just shouldn't be allowed. But attacks on megaphones could be a good start. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Right. This was in the news a couple of days ago. Alex Salmond died with deaths of more than £340,000. I was interested to hear that, because I remember Alex Salmond had his wars with the SNP, didn't he? Big time. Various individuals within the SNP. And I remember hearing, okay, he was found not guilty in his court case and he tried to sue the SNP and the Scottish government. I sort of got the impression, though, that he was just trying to go on and on and on with it, like he couldn't let it drop. And I think it's a tricky situation, because sometimes you might have some sort of injustice against you, and maybe there's a way that justice can be done, and that's absolutely right to try and seek that. Okay, fair enough. And it may be in some cases that it's good to try and seek justice over a very prolonged period of time and never give up. But it also can be the case that sometimes you just need to say, oh, okay, well, that's it, I'm going to call it a day. Partly because, prospect of success or cost or whatever. But the other issue as well is, do you want your life dominated for this thing with an Alex Salmond's case? I mean, we're talking decades? I mean, very possibly. So I got the impression before Alex Salmond's death that he really was, like a dog with a bone with this. He wasn't going to let go. He was going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, spending and spending and spending to try and get his own back on these people. Now, maybe that was justified. Maybe it was unwise from a personal point of view. But the fact that he's died in huge debt, and apparently that was mainly because of legal fees, suggests that this got a bit out of control in Alex Salmond's mind, and his sort of thirst for vengeance or justice, whichever, sort of got a bit out of control. That would be my reading of the situation. With the family party, I quite often meet, well, not often, from time to time, I meet someone who's had some sort of injustice at the hands of the state or another person, and okay, they tell the story, and you think, yeah, that's not good. That shouldn't have happened. You're only hearing half the story, of course, but from what you're hearing, you think, yeah, that's bad. But then the person's never been able to let go of it, and it becomes their identity. It becomes like their life crusade is to try and get their own back on this issue, and it's not healthy. And so I've spoken to people who really it's a blight on their life. They see themselves trying to win justice, but what they're actually doing is sort of undermining their own happiness, or whatever you want to call it. They're harming themselves by keeping persevering instead of just trying to let go of the thing. Right, some comments coming in, Robert. The disruption was someone else's event, could surely be prosecuted under public order or breach of the peace laws. Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't know what happened at this recent one. I don't know if the police did tell him to turn it down. I would hope that they did. When we've had that situation, the police have always refused to do anything, which I think is completely wrong. If that happens again, I'll be very insistent. I think we'll get it filmed and saying to a police officer, right, you just got to do something about this. You just need to go and say to him, you cannot do that. So we'll be a bit more assertive with that in the future. Right. Good evening. Right. So that's Alex Salmond. Hamza Yousaf. I just put this slide on as a cue to remind me to talk about Humza Yousaf. Humza Yousaf is getting worse by the day. When he was First Minister, I used to say he doesn't really care about Scotland. His real passion is Muslim, Palestine, international affairs. That's his real, and race identity politics. That's his real passion. Okay, he happened to get promoted as a DEI hire, basically to become First Minister, but his real passion was that. And since he's finished as First Minister, how right I was. He's not remotely interested in Scotland. He's interested in Palestine and being a Muslim in politics. And he's really pleased when there's other Muslims, because we need more Muslims, because the more Muslims you have, the better it is. I just want someone to say to him, why? What is it about Muslims? What is it about Muslim values? Because he doesn't hold to any Muslim values, really. It's just Muslim tribal identity. Anyway, so the other day, I mean, it just gets more and more ridiculous with every video. He said, it's getting like 1930s Germany around here. So I made a video saying, I can see what you mean, anti-Semitic mobs on the streets, Jewish businesses being targeted, an anti-Semitic party elected into power, in other words, the SNP, and that party is now killing the innocent by the tens of thousands, in this case by abortion, in Hitler's case via gas chambers, etc. But Humza Yousaf cannot look at any issue in a balanced way. I mean, he talks about anything that's, someone was plotting some crime against Muslims or some vandalism at a mosque or whatever. He just leaps on that and ignores everything else. Now, Muslims will be mistreated. There will be incidents when Muslims are, abused in the street, or there will be crimes committed. Okay, yeah, absolutely sympathetic with that. And we want to do everything we can. And that's why when we talk about these issues, try and talk about it in a sensible, balanced way. I don't want people to be thinking, right, Muslims are the enemy. They are trying to take over, because what that translates to is someone who might be, running their little business down the road. All they want to take over is the business of the bloke with the warehouse down the street. And to be suggesting that they're the enemy trying to impose Sharia law, they're trying to take over and form a caliphate or whatever. I mean, that's, to some Muslims in Scotland, that is just absolutely untrue and unfair. Right? There are some Muslims who do think more like that, and their values are extremely concerning. And that is a national emergency in some ways, is the number of Muslims with extreme and dangerous views. That's a major problem that needs to be addressed. We're going to talk about it in a way that doesn't create more problems. Basically, I think what we don't want is like two mobs clashing on the street. Like there was reports recently, wasn't there? It was like a UKIP. I mean, UKIP now are a really aggressive, inflammatory anti-Islam outfit. And then they got a bunch of Muslims come and march against them as well on the street. I mean, that's getting pretty close to street warfare. That's really what it's heading for. Is that what we want? No, absolutely not. So, so try and talk in a way to address the issues absolutely straightforwardly, but without demonizing all Muslims and without being inflammatory. That's what we try to do. But Humza Yousaf, all he tries to do is to stir up Muslim resentment. He's basically always saying to Muslims, you're getting such a raw deal. Everyone's so horrible to you. Poor old you, poor old us. We're so excluded that we need to get more of us into the top jobs in politics. That's the sort of pitch. Very, very frustrating. Anyway, but maybe he'll fade a little bit when he's left the parliament. But I fear not. Right. Mary, that looks like me in that picture there as well, in the Swiss Alps. Do you think there's a difference between trying to get their own back, trying to get justice? It's a fine line, isn't it? It's a fine line. People talk about vengeance and justice. I guess when people talk about vengeance, they're tending to mean more an emotional drive, a desire to see the other person suffer because they made you suffer. Whereas a desire for justice would be a desire to see an injustice corrected. So whatever injustice has been committed, then that shouldn't be allowed to stand. The system should be able to correct it. Trying to get their own back, trying to get justice. I think those motives are mixed up. in anyone, probably in court cases and these sort of disputes. Trying to get your own back. I mean, I guess that's an inevitable feeling. Is it entirely wrong? I don't think it is entirely wrong, because it's so closely linked to trying to get justice. If something's been done to you and you don't want that person to get away with it, then I guess getting your own back would be taking the law into your own hands. Maybe justice would be handing over the process to the justice system. So yeah, that's what I think. For now, do comment again if you want to say some more about that. Right, Jack, genocide, starvation, rape in Congo, Syria, Darfur, Yemen, only news when it's Jews. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the case. Lots of human rights abuses on a colossal scale are going on around the world, but the focus tends to be on Gaza. Even now, it's interesting, we've had the ceasefire, which I know is a bit precarious, but immediately you've got Hamas dragging people out into the streets and shooting them in the street. I mean, any protest, any comment from Hamza Yousaf about that? No. John, the party support prisoner early release. I think that the current system, basically where your sentence is meaningless, so you're sentenced to however many years, and you know you're not going to serve even half of it. I think that is wrong. It depends whether they call it early release or keeping people later. But I think the idea that there's something to work for in prison is important. How else do you motivate prisoners to have a good attitude and be respectful and follow the rules, etc.? What carrots can you dangle in front of them? Well, if there's the possibility of slightly earlier release or the fear of slightly later release, then I think that is probably a valuable tool to the people running the prison to help them to control and to push the prisoners in the right direction. So do we support early prisoner release? I think currently it's totally out of control, but some degree of it could be justified. I think one of the things with early release there, if a prisoner does misbehave, then the early release can just be cancelled. So it does give as I understand it, the prison authorities quite a bit of flexibility to be able to punish people for things that they do in prison. It doesn't have to go to court because you're just rescinding an early release because they've already been sentenced to a longer sentence. So, yeah, that's my take on that. Right, Hamza Yousaf. This is just a clip. I started doing short videos quite recently, and they've been going quite well. That's just a thing of our Facebook performance from, what's that, 9th of November to the 5th of, 9th of October to the 5th of November. So, I mean, so going on 500,000 views, reach going on 250,000 people. That means how many people have seen our posts on their phone or on their feed. New followers, net about 700, 16,000 interactions, likes or comments. So that's pretty impressive, I think. So we're very pleased with that. So our reach is increasing with short videos. So I mean, do respond to them, comment, like them, share them. That will all help. It's quite interesting. I might make a video of this. It's quite interesting to compare our social media feed with Reform. Reform just put out almost all their content they put out is contentless. There's no political message. It's just things like, we've got momentum. The SNP are useless. We'd be much better. Keir Starmer's terrible. We would be better. Here's our councillor and such and such. He says, vote Reform for a new start in Scotland. So it's all that sort of thing. So there is virtually no content whatsoever. Now, you could learn from that. It just goes to show having intelligent policies counts for nothing. And, well, it's not entirely true, but there may be something in that. The other thing they're always they're always saying, we've got the momentum, which is a problem with the first past the post system or our not really properly proportional system in Scotland, is we've got the momentum. It is a powerful message, but it shouldn't be. That should be meaningless. If we have proportional representation, every party would say, here are our policies. If you like them, vote for us. And people would think, well, if we vote for them, I like the policies, there's a decent chance they'll get an MSP in. So I'll vote for them. We want a sensible system. But of course, the bigger parties never want that. They always want to design a system that keeps small parties out and makes it more difficult for small parties. But right. So this, for years, the left said prison doesn't work. After Southport did the opposite. Yes, people were punished very, very harshly for the rioting in England in particular. Then, yeah, that's definitely the case. And when they say punishments don't work, they're talking about cannabis or drugs or graffiti or petty theft or whatever. If you're talking about like hate crime, racism, sexism, sexual assaults, domestic abuse, etc., oh, absolutely, I'll lock them up and throw away the key. So they absolutely do believe in punishment, but only for selected crimes. Right, assisted suicide in the Scottish Parliament. It's going through the committees at the moment. To be honest, I'm not following it desperately closely, but Gordon MacDonald gave us a very informative update at the Family Party conference. So they've raised the age to 18, which they've said they were going to do ages ago. People have pointed out, obviously, they say that you're not regarded as fully accountable for your actions in a criminal case until you're 25, but you can decide to kill yourself when you're 18. I mean, you can't possibly make sense of that. It doesn't make sense, but that's mere logic and counts for little in the Scottish Parliament. Now, the other thing I find quite disturbing about the bill in Scotland is it mandates lying on death certificates. So if you've got someone, let's say, with a form of cancer, and they decide to kill themselves with the help of their doctor, so the doctor gives them the poison, the person drinks the poison, and they die because they've just poisoned themselves, what goes on the death certificate? Cancer, which is a lie. So regardless of any other issues, it is a lie. So it is the state saying, we are going to have a system that involves lying. That is just totally wrong in itself. But what it illustrates about assisted dying is, yet again, it illustrates that people are not comfortable about it. People feel bad about it. People have to use euphemisms. People can't face up to the straightforward facts. They have to call it assisted dying. And on the death certificate, they have to lie and say it's the disease that killed them when it plainly wasn't. But again, it's so crystal clear that their conscience is not clear on the issue. They want to avoid straightforward descriptions of what goes on, and they go to extreme lengths to do it, even just straightforward dying. Right, this is time for reform sounds a bit like Labour's time for change. Equally contentless. Yes, absolutely. I think I will do a video on Reform's social media feed. I think it could be quite a bit light-hearted, a bit tongue-in-cheek. We'll see. Reform supports PR, so do the Lib Dems. Yes. And my point is, what do the Greens? Well, they should do, because they're getting a raw deal at the moment from the system. So the Greens will probably support it. But the way we're heading in UK politics is five-party politics. If you've got five-party politics, how many MPs are fed up? How many parties in the Parliament are fed up with first past the post? How many MPs are representing parties that are disadvantaged by first past the post? An ever-increasing number. If you've just got two parties, Labour and the Conservative, they're never going to want PR, proportional representation, never, because the current system suits them down to the ground. Who does the current system suit now? Well, Reform, because they're out in front in the polls, but their policy is PR. They're probably changing their mind, which is not very principled of them, but their policy is PR. Right, Labour and the Conservatives, they're on about 18%. So they'll be thinking, we're going to get 18% of the vote, but we're only going to get 5% of the MPs. This is not fair. We want PR. So Labour and Conservatives, are they going to start saying they want PR? Lib Dems already want it. The Greens will want it. So what's going to go on here? In Scotland, the SNP will never want it because they benefit from first past the post. But at Westminster, more and more parties are going to be supporting PR. And who knows, maybe it will come. And as I always say, if we had full PR in Scotland, I think I would be an MSP now. And that would be absolutely fair. It would reflect the support we've got in the Parliament. I would have been elected next time. would have had a far larger platform. What would we have been looking at this time? How many MSPs this time? We'd probably be expecting that we were going to get, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 MSPs this time elected if we had a fair system. But we don't. So we've got a bigger mountain to climb. So that's what we have to do. Yeah, I mean, Patrick Harvey's ridiculous attempt to put buffer zones around assisted dying facilities. I mean, that's what is he thinking? Yeah, assisted dying and assisted lying. Yeah, it's a bit like the abortion law. The abortion law requires doctors to lie as well, that they sign off that the abortion is necessary for the health or well-being or whatever, mental health, physical health of the mother, when there is no evidence whatsoever of mental health benefits of abortion. There's only evidence of harms. So the doctors who sign the forms are basically lying, and that's just institutionalized in the NHS. Right, I'll leave that one for now. This was an interesting one. Did you see this? Kemi Badenoch hacked Harriet Harman's website 17 years ago. In other words, when she was about 28 or 29 years old, she hacked the website of a Labour politician and put pro-conservative lines in it. Okay, but not quite sure what to make about that. I mean, when you're aged 29, 28, 29, that's something that should count against someone in the longer term. Is that just a bit of fun? Or is that really shows something that's not serious? Because Kemi Badenoch said that when she was at school, she reported someone for cheating in an exam, and did they get disqualified or expelled or something? So she was proud that she was so upright that she reports other people for wrongdoing, gets them into trouble, then hacks into a rival politician's website. Yeah, what do you think? Just fun? Or does that show some sort of yeah, it's not. My feeling is that's really not good. Maybe if you did it when you were 17 and you're now, how old is she? 47 or 48 or something. Okay, fair enough. But if it was when you're in your late 20s, I'm not sure about that at all. I think that could become a bit of a bigger issue for her. This rate she'll get a job with the BBC. Yes. Yeah, a good chance. Now, you'll have heard me say a few times that there's a move in the United States in the Supreme Court to look at overturning the judgment that said same-sex marriage has to be available in every state. So it would be like the equivalent of Roe versus Wade, where the Supreme Court could have said, no, we're overturning that. It's actually up to the states whether they have same-sex marriage or not. Well, the Supreme Court has rejected that case. It wasn't a straightforward case. It was on the back of another case, someone being fined for refusing to provide same-sex marriages. So it wasn't the strongest way of presenting it to them, but it has been rejected, unfortunately. But it's interesting. I think this has not gone away. It is not a settled issue in the United States. And I think there could be other attempts with the Supreme Court to overturn that. And I'm not at all sure they will all be unsuccessful. So let's wait and see how that goes. It's a bit late. We've only got 5 minutes to go, but don't bother sharing at the moment. Yeah, that's just a report from France. That's the French Parliament there. French senators urge action against rising anti-Christian attacks. A lot of churches vandalized, set on fire, etc. in France. Now, the report from this, it wasn't entirely clear who was doing it. I don't know if it's basically the candidates would tend to be either Muslims or extreme secularists or just vandals, basically, so mindless vandals. So I think it might be a combination of these. I know this has been happening in Norway quite a bit. It hasn't particularly been happening in the UK, as far as I'm aware. There have been fires in churches in Scotland recently, but I think there've been innocent explanations for them. But certainly in France, there is a lot of arson targeted at and vandalism targeted at churches. So we'll watch that story. I mean, is that going to start coming to Scotland? We shall see. We shall see. Right, quick story here. Family party policy. Children in school should clean and tidy their own classrooms, like they do in Singapore and Japan etc. I mean, why not? What a great idea. For a start, it gets the classroom clean and tidy, might even save a bit of money, but it's good training. If you make a mess, you clear it up. So I think that would really help it to instill in pupils that you don't just leave the place in a dump. So you don't make it a mess in the first place. You look after it, you respect it, because if you don't, you have to clear it up. And just the idea that there's work to do. I think children can sometimes get the feeling in schools that the staff are there to wait on them, to avoid that, to do jobs to save them having to actually get down to work. But I think the children getting used to the idea that there's a job to do, so you do it, is excellent. So that is Scottish Family Party policy. It happens in Canada, does it? Okay, right, great. So it would happen in Scotland with the Scottish Family Party. But you can imagine there'll be all sorts of complaints on the grounds of children's rights. This is child labour, etc. But we do it. We do it. Now, again, just about reform. What are reforms? Education policies, again, we've got about 6 pages of them. Reforms are, I think it's restore standards and end woke something or other, woke stuff in education. I mean, that's it. For a party of that size and that much money and that many staff, they've got virtually no policies whatsoever in Scotland. I would guess what it'd be interesting to see when they do finally come up with policies at some stage, assuming they do, how many of them will look a bit cut and paste from the Scottish Family Party manifesto? Let's see. But I'll tell you what, they won't be cut and pasting. They won't be cut and pasting about assisted dying, because that will cut their membership down the middle. So we won't see that. Just another aside about reform, just before I finish. You know, in America, there's a significant movement of anti-Semitism, white supremacy, sort of quasi-Nazi thinking coming in at the fringe. And I think the reason it comes in is if you're, say, a Tucker Carlson or a right-wing commentator, when Joe Biden's in, you can have a field day slating Joe Biden, and everyone watches your content. Then when Trump gets in, what do you make videos about? How great Trump is. Well, that's a bit boring. If you want to hear how great Trump is, you just listen to Trump, because he'll tell you how great he is. So the Trump supporting alternative media, how are you going to get people to watch? You've got to be saying something different. You've got to be saying, you know, various public figures, they're not really a woman, they're really a man, etc. Or you've got to be coming out with more extreme points, which is like Tucker Carlson's gone down that line. So figures who really should be on the lunatic fringe and be being ignored are being brought into the mainstream. And it's very concerning. That's what's happening in America. But again, how is this going to play out in Britain? So who's going to be vulnerable to these influences? I would say a lot of it is going to be a lot of reform supporters. So will this start rearing its head among reform supporters? Maybe not. In Britain, you've got Reform, who are sort of pretty right-wing, but they would not be going into that sort of like white identitarian politics or sort of anti-Semitism. Some of the white identitarianism might be floating around a bit. But if you go further right from Reform, you get to like Tommy Robinson and that sort of gang. But they're very definitely not anti-Semitic. The white identitarian, well, sort of maybe a bit bigger. You have to go a step beyond them to come to the real far-right extremists, where you get the anti-Semitism, white nationalism, etc. You have to go right over to that. But with what's happening in America, might it start seeping in to Reform? We'll see. We'll see. It's a danger. If I was in charge at Reform, I'd be thinking, we really need to make sure this doesn't get any sort of grip here. Will they be able to weed out any candidates who are going down that line? I would suspect they won't be able to weed out the candidates. They will get in. So I would imagine in the months and years to come, this could become a little bit of an issue for Reform. That we find candidates and representatives saying things that are totally off the wall with regard to Hitler and World War II and Jews, race, etc. We will see. Right, let's just finish with a comment from Mr. Mellon. You've changed your name, haven't you? Blind Mellon Triple Z. We've had lunatics spreading nonsense so far. So the writer's counterbalance is funny needed. Well, I think that there's nothing funny about them taking on views that are absolutely appalling. But it's interesting like the crazy extremes emerge on both sides. And you're right, the left has been plagued by taking on utterly ridiculous, crazy views like gender ideology, and they've paid a price for it. Ultimately, I think they've paid a price for it. But now in America, now the right are dominant, then you've got really crazy views coming there as well. I mean, which is worse, like gender ideology and critical race theory, whatever, or sort of anti-Semitism, white nationalism? Well, it doesn't matter which is worse, because we can just totally avoid the whole lot of them. Right. Thank you for your company this evening and your comments. It's been a very pleasant hour for me. I hope it was for you as well. I didn't see any comments about the format. Is it different where you're watching this? If you have got any comments about the format of the screen, because I've experimented with something a bit different today. If you've got any thoughts about that, do put them in, and I will see you next week. Right. Good night.